Good day, wonderful viewers. This is Citizens Network Gambia, CNG, and you're welcome to yet another episode of Talk to CNG. And I am Sukeja. You see, this is actually a program where we invite prominent Gambians that are doing well in the nation, that are part of national development. And of course, today we have Madi Jobateh.
Okay,
Madi, thank you for honoring the invitation.
good to be here. Thank you.
Uncle Mari is actually a human rights activist. I think everyone knows that he does not actually need an introduction. Gambians know who Madi Jobateh is. We've been seeing your, I would say, I have been following you on Facebook. I have been seeing your recent posts on Facebook. We're going to go straight to the point. There's this post that you posted a few days back with regards to Gambia being a failed state. Yes, because we have had lots of issues back then with regards to the babies that died, regards to lots of corruption scandals. Can you tell us more about what you've stated about Gambia being a failed state?
Yeah, thanks. I did indicate Gambia is a failed state and listed a number of issues. Among them included the death of about 70 or more children from tainted syrup, and for which there has not been any accountability. So that when you look at the Gambia, not just today, but since independence, that we have a state or government which collects tax and takes loans on behalf of the people, receives grants in the name of the people. And certainly the Gambia is a well-endowed country that has the capacity to generate its own development. But then when you look at the fact that taxes are so high and as huge loans have been taken and all of that, and then you look at the social economic conditions of the people, what you see is a largely impoverished society that is lacking in the basics, whether it's electricity supply or water, or good roads, community development, education, healthcare, the ability to feed oneself, and above all, to have efficient institutions, public institutions that are performing their functions effectively and efficiently. You realize these are all not happening. So that kind of a state to me has failed because the fundamental objective of a state is to protect and fulfill the rights of citizens. And these rights are our social rights, our economic rights, our civil and political rights. And then when you look, as I said, across the spectrum, you realize all of these rights are severely either unattained or constrained or denied or limited in so many ways. But at the same time, when you do the flip side, is to realize how the country is highly indebted, high tax rate, but at the same time, high incidence of corruption. And on top of that, you have this high rate of incentives, benefits that public officials, particularly at the top, request for themselves. And then they are not performing the job that they are doing. So that in the final analysis, what you have, therefore, is what obtains the poverty, the high cost of living, the lack of opportunities, and which are manifesting in many things and in many ways. The fact that you even have Gambians, not just the uneducated, the illiterate, but even the well-educated want to leave the country. So either they go through the back way or they are looking for jobs, opportunities everywhere. Yes, just to leave the country because people have lost hope in their own country, that their country offers them the opportunity, the ability to be able to earn a decent standard of living. So all that put together, for me, to describe the Gambia is that it's a failed state. That is, the state, since independence and until now, has failed to fulfill its fundamental obligations to the people of the Gambia.
Sadly, what would you say contributed to these factors that you've mentioned? Would you say it's because we do not have good leaders, or because we do not have patriotics?
Yeah, I think primarily is leadership. Like any society at any time in history, every people get to a point where they would have the leadership to salvage them. Indeed, all members of society have a role to play in the salvation of a particular society. But it is also a fact that in that process, leaders do emerge, and to provide that direction, to provide that awareness, that understanding, to provide, the opportunities, the mechanism, the framework, to empower the people to be able to deliver themselves, to salvage themselves. Now, our situation, for me, is such that since independence, we lack that kind of a leadership. So out of colonialism, when we gained independence, we needed a leadership that should have understood that we are a nation that was coming out of colonialism, a nation that at that time, literacy rates, basic services, all the indicators, social, economic indicators, are very bad, and that is simply because we are, colonized for a long period. We suffered slavery, but apart from that, we also came out of that traditional African society in which, it was patriarchy and feudalism and so on. So at independence, there was a need to build democracy. There was a need to build the nation. But to do that, there was a need to educate the citizens to realize what it means to be independent, what it means to be sovereign citizens. But that would also require that the leadership not only do that, but the leadership themselves abide by certain secret values, of leadership, because leadership is about honesty, it's about integrity, but it's also about having vision and having the competence, the charisma, to be able to organize and mobilize the people, to enlighten the people. So I think we lack that. Even though to say our first president, who was Sadauda, was someone who had the values. I think he was a man of a very humble, an honest person, a person who believed in democracy and in human rights. But unfortunately, he was not able to transform or translate his own values and ideas onto the state which he led and on the wider society. And that is manifested in the fact that he could not build strong democratic institutions, could not generate strong democratic culture, so that if he had done that, probably he would not have been a president for 30 years, because he would have, established a system in which we would have seen, leaders emerging and changing and so on, and that would have really strengthened the society. So that failure, which was seen in the way the state eventually was like under his leadership, the corruption, the inefficiency, and leading to the poverty, that was widespread in the country, the lack of availability of basic social services for most people, and so on. So that by 1994, when we had the coup, the story was very easy for the soldiers to narrate and to win the hearts of the people, because people could see what they were talking about, the corruption and the flamboyant lifestyles indeed, and the lack of services and so on. But then the unfortunate thing is we came to have even a worse leadership, after the Jawara leadership, so that Jammeh and his cabal of a bunch of criminals had no values whatsoever, and so They did not only fail to provide the leadership that was necessary, but they, in fact, went on an onslaught against the very values of the society, of the laws, against the people, and so on, so that we saw what happened in the 22 years that he was in charge in this country. And now we have moved on to the third leadership.
Yes.
And again, we have seen that the current leadership has no regard whatsoever to values. So it is important for us to emphasize the importance of values. You see, a person can be very well educated, I mean, to the highest level. The person can be very skillful, has all the skills and so on. You can equip a person with all the tools, all right? And a person can be well resourced, having all the resources necessary to do something like the work you are doing. But if that person lacks values of honesty, of responsibility, of commitment to, the rights of the people, of commitment to uphold the law, those kind of values, if you lack them, then it means your tendency to be corrupt and so on will be very high. And so that is what we are seeing in the Gambia today. Again, having a leadership that has no regard for values whatsoever, whether it's values that can be found in our religions, that can be found in our cultures, values that could be found in our laws, because our laws has values, ethics that we need to abide by. Now, if you have a leadership that does not care about those, then what that translates into is corruption.
Yes.
Is corruption, not just corruption, but to protect perpetrators, to cover up corruption, which means to undermine the efficiency of institutions. So institutions would not be, public institutions would not be efficient, and so on.
That's where I wanted to step in. You've said that it's due to bad leaders that we've had since Jawara regime to date. And if you look at it, most of these top officials, or top, like I would say the ministers and all of that, they're from our societies. Some of them are from our homes. Most of them, before they were appointed, they were people that would sit at a corner and say, okay, the government is corrupt. But at the end of the day, when they're part of the government, you get to see that they're way corrupt than the actual government that was actually there. Yeah. So would you say it also depends on what Gambians actually like with regards to our attitude, our behavior and all of that, or maybe that the laws of the land are actually weak to go to punish these individuals. I'll give an example, the case of Dr. Banja, fisheries.
Fisheries, yeah.
Yes. And he was punished and he went to jail within few months, I think it was less than a year, he was actually pardoned by the president. Yeah. So what does that set?
Yeah, so I think our laws as they are, and indeed we need to change the laws, we got a lot of bad laws, but the laws as they are adequate. They're enough to really prevent and detect and punish corruption, provided at the highest level the president is willing to uphold the law, is willing to abide by the law. So the laws are adequate in terms of that. The laws are adequate in terms of making sure public institutions, officials perform their functions and deliver efficiently. So what our problem is the failure of the leaders to uphold the law. Okay. So that in the case of Bamba Banja, for example, you would realize that in the past 7 years or 8 years, was the only one convicted of corruption.
Yes.
But even that case, when you look at it, you realize it was haphazard because that particular case involved many other people that should have been tried with him, because it's a case of bribery and corruption. Yes. And where you have bribery, certainly the one who gives bribe and the one who takes bribe are all culpable. But we did not see, anyone else tried except him. Yes. And further, the sentence, he didn't serve even half of it and pardoned. So that clearly exposes the lack of commitment, the political will in the president to uphold the law, to abide by the law, and therefore combat corruption. Now, you mentioned the issue of citizens. We are quick to easily say people have to change their attitude, and I always tell folks, attitude is not like your wardrobe at home where you have all your shirts. So today you can decide to put on a black shirt or a white shirt tomorrow,
Yes.
a green shirt the next day, and so on. So your attitude, my attitude, is built over time. From family, from the day you are born, sent to whichever school you are sent to, the community in which you live, what you see on television, the friends you associate with, and what operates in society. All of that goes to mold your attitude.
Yes.
But of course, individuals have internal and external influences, and so how much external factors would influence your attitude would also depend on what is your internal makeup in terms of what values do you really know and hold as an individual. What level of education, exposure do you have so that it molds your character to see whether your character is such that you would uphold those principles or you will drop them, just to satisfy some desires and so on. So our society, when you look at it, we are not molded to build strong characters. From the home, communities, across society, the way we are brought up and socialized and so on. You see many instances in which we send double messages. In one message, we send all the good values, all right, from our culture, from our religion, and even from the laws, be honest, be good, and so on. But at the same time, we also have a lot of messages, at home, in our communities, with friends, and so on, that also encourages bad attitude, encourages corruption, encourages a lack of patriotism, and so on. So these words we use in our languages. I mean, a cow or a sheep feeds where you tie it, for example. We see those kind of things. But even at home, you see a parent tell the child, somebody has come to ask for the father, tell him, I'm not at home.
Yes.
And you are in the house.
Yes.
So you are telling that child at the same time, you can lie. Because the child knows you are lying.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is there at the social cultural level. But at the political level also, our attitude is built by how we are educated politically, to have the political awareness. That is, how we are educated to know our rights as citizens, how we are educated to know our responsibilities, so that we have the strength, the urge, the determination to, exercise our rights and perform our duties. So that at the level of the political level, what I see is there isn't much political education, so that a lot of our citizens are yet to understand and appreciate citizenship. When we say citizenship, what is citizenship? Because if you don't appreciate this thing called citizenship, it will be difficult for you to play your citizenship role in society.
Definitely.
And for me, the fact that we have public institutions, public officials plunder our resources, abuse our rights, underperform, and don't give us goods and services, yet impose difficult conditions on the people, and still the people don't do anything about that, just tells me the people still lack the necessary political awareness. Because if they have, they would have stood up against all these abuses and inefficiency and the incompetence that is in the state. So that's how I perceive it.
Interesting. Gambian politics. So we're gonna get into the politics. With regards to the leaders that we've heard, started from late President Jawara and coming to former President Jammeh and now to Barrow. 2026 is fast approaching, Madi, and would you say you've seen any competent person that they can stand for election 2026 president's election, and you think it will be good for Gambians?
Well, I will not speak to partisan issues like which party or which candidate
Yes.
is available. Um, yeah, because I don't. I'm not into partisan politics certainly, and but what I can say is the government needs to change. This government needs to change in 2026 for a number of reasons. First, this president has served for 10 years. For me, it's a matter of principle that no one should serve for more than 10 years.
Like more than 2 times?
Yeah, 2 times. So whether you did well or you did bad, for me, 2 times, no Gambian should serve as a president for more than 2 times. So we definitely need to have change.
So which comes to making sure that the draft constitution or maybe another constitution should come into place.
Yes, but even without that, because I doubt we're going to have a new constitution before 2026, but even without that, I think every citizen should take a conscious decision that, look, 2026 should be the end of President Adama Barrow. Like I said, first and foremost, because he served 2 times.
Yes.
For me, whether he did well or not is meaningless. I mean, is irrelevant. What is important is 2 times, end of story. So even if Suka is there, 2 times we serve, you should be done. All right. Now, the other thing is, I think this government needs to change is because of its performance. It has not performed to transform the social and economic life of Gambians. I mean, so that under this government, poverty has increased, cost of living continues to increase, corruption continues to increase, so all of those things put together, and country has been put into what I consider to be, serious uncertainty and lack of direction. So I do not think this government really deserves to continue beyond 2026. And thirdly, is to say this government lacks a political will, to govern this country according to the laws of the Gambia. So what we have seen, this president has no interest whatsoever to be law-abiding, to uphold the law, and for me, that is a threat to national security. Rather, what I have seen, again, my fourth reason is the polarization that this president and this government has been perpetrating in this country, thereby leading to serious divisions and antagonisms within our society. And we need a leadership, a president, we need a government that will unify our people, that will recognize, realize that they have a fundamental sacred duty to maintain the unity and the stability, and the cohesion of this society. Now, what I have seen the past, 8 years, and which I think will continue, in the term of this president, is to continue to divide Gambians. And I think that is not something which is sustainable. So for many reasons, as I said, we need to have change in 2026. Now, what is the alternative? Who is the alternative? That is up to governments to decide. But what I would say is governments must realize that they own this country.
Yes.
All right. We own this country. Political parties don't own this country. No individual candidate owns this country. And we don't owe any political party or any political leader any allegiance whatsoever.
Definitely.
All right. So whoever puts your name to be a party leader or a candidate, we don't owe you anything. You owe us everything, to be honest, to be open, to convince us that you are competent. And for me, as a citizen, and I tell all citizens, scrutinize each and every candidate, each and every party, and you know, this slightest doubt that you have is enough for you to abandon that candidate or that, you know, that party, because you know, you owe them nothing, and you owe yourself and this country everything to make sure you hand over this country to a party, to a candidate, which has the moral fortitude, which has the values, which is committed to transforming this country into a better country, you know, which has the will and the commitment to uphold the law, you know, and to manage the resources, the affairs of this country in a manner that is transparent, accountable, and will respond to the needs of the citizens. So for me, these are my criteria or the factors I look at in terms of the alternative. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Madi Jobateh has been called a threat to the nation. Madi Jobateh has been detained not once. But we Gambians do know Madi is someone very substantial in the country. What actually is giving you that motivation to still fight for what you believe in, still speak up your mind in whatever whatever issues that are, like I would say, issues that are actually happening in the country? Madi will come straight point and point out your the things that you think needs to be done. It's nothing like, okay, maybe if I write this, they're gonna come for me and all of that. So what actually motivates you to do that, unlike many Gambians?
Well, I mean, I think after everything is just to say, I love myself. I care about my life, my future, and that imposes a responsibility on me to realize that if I am in any space like here right now, I want to be free. Yes, I want to be safe. I want to have the means, you know, the opportunities to be what I want to be, to have what I should have, you know, and so on. So that realization makes me, therefore, do what I am doing so that I recognize I am a Gambian. I'm not a Senegalese. I'm not a Chinese. I'm not in America. I'm not in Australia. I'm in the Gambia. And it is the Gambian citizenship I hold. So as long as I live in this Gambia, as long as I hold that Gambian citizenship, therefore my security, my happiness, my health, my freedom, and my future would have to be defined and provided and guaranteed by being a Gambian, and especially by being in the Gambia. So understanding that raises an obligation in me, therefore, to make sure, as long as I live in this Gambia and as a Gambian, I will make sure that, therefore, in this society, there is that safety, there is freedom. Realizing that if I don't protect the freedom, you know, protect freedom in this country, if I don't make sure that in this country opportunities are available, that there is security and so on, then my life is at threat, is at risk. I'm threatened. So especially where we have a Republic of the Gambia, which has a constitution, and that constitution has made it very clear that the sovereignty of the Gambia resides in the people of the Gambia, that the state and all its organs derive their authority, their power from the people, and perform their functions on behalf of the people and for the welfare of the people. Then that has imposed on me, you know, sacred obligation to make sure that I hold that state to account, because to that state I pay tax in my name, they take loans, they receive grants, that I have equipped that state with tools of violence They have a military, they have a police, they are armed with guns. And I have surrendered to them my rights so that they have the power to arrest me if the state feels I'm a suspect, and so on. They have a right to, prevent me from going here or there. Now that's huge amount of power I have given to them. So I think I would be foolish, and it will be self-destructive if I sit down and fold my arms and let that state, the men and women who work in that state, who may not be people with who are not who are unscrupulous, they may subvert that power and the tools, the weapons that I gave them against me. So realizing that imposes an obligation on me, therefore, to check them, knowing fully well if I don't do so, if that state is in the hands of unscrupulous men and women, then they can weaponize that state, the powers I gave them, manifested in institutions, in the authority that they have, in the weapons that I give them, they can use it against me. And, Sukai, we have seen this happen here in this country. You look at the past 22 years, we all followed TRRC.
Yes.
I mean, we saw how a president that we elect as a public servant transform that, institutions of that state, whether it's the military or the police or the judiciary or, the prisons and so on, to go after citizens. All right. And when we change that government, we've seen today another president we elect, Adama Barrow, using the police to go and arrest citizens, including myself, for merely saying our opinion. So what does that mean? It means we have still men and women, who lack values, who do not obey our law, weaponize our institutions against citizens. And we have a right to criticize the president. So for me, this is my motivation. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that is why I get surprised when people say, Madi Jobateh, human rights activist. I'm like, okay, but everyone should be a human rights activist.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I don't see why we classify some people as human rights activists and not others. No. For me, every citizen should be a human rights activist, should be an activist for social justice, should be an activist for the rule of law, should be an activist for economic rights, for cultural rights, for, social rights, to make sure that, the law is applied equally, and so on. Because if you don't do that, as I said, we face risks. Threats are coming against us. And that, when the state is left unchecked, that can be dangerous. And the evidence of that, we know that, because we went through 22 years of dictatorship where the state was unchecked.
Yes.
And, an unchecked state, unchecked officials, public officials, the damage they can do, not just to you and me, like by arresting you, by killing you, by detaining you, but they can go and take public resources and use it for themselves and deny us. So you look at the Janet Commission, for example, how Jame would send a text message or piece of paper for officials to go to central bank and take millions of dollars
Just
and
like
dollars.
that.
Yes, and then our people are there, very poor, don't have electricity, water, hospitals don't have equipment. But one person can just sit our resources as a collective, our national coffers, the national cake. One person can sit there because we elect you, we appoint you in public office. You go there and write a piece of paper, go and take millions and use it for themselves. So this is why we all need to be activists.
We all need to be activists. Every Gambian needs to be activists. Be reminded that you're watching CNG. Uncle Madi, that will take us to our last question. With regards to Gambian security, what would you advise Gambians in general, to the Gambia government and of course Gambian youths? We are seeing lots of dead cases recently, and most of these dead cases are people that are less than 20 years of age. reasons, or some of the reasons because of the drugs that they're using, some of the reasons because of issues that they have with one another,
Yeah.
murdering one another. So
Yeah.
it's really a cause of concern.
Indeed, indeed. Suka, nothing happens in a vacuum. Yeah. You see, I have trained the Gambia police force for a number of years, a lot of police officers about human rights, some 10 years ago or so. And one of the sessions I used to have in those human rights trainings is called community policing.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, because if you do human rights, it's important you also do security studies, conflict, analysis, conflict resolution, law enforcement. And I have done a lot of training and research on that myself.
Okay.
So that I came to realize that community policing was a concept that started in New York City. Which was a city, they said it's the biggest city in the world, maybe. But in the 80s, 90s, there was so much crime in New York. And of course, everyone knows how well equipped the New York police were. But, they couldn't just contain the crime. So they introduced this idea of community policing, realizing that the police are civilians, with arms, to maintain law and order within the civil community. That they came to realize that crime does not happen in a vacuum. Yes, there were gangs, in New York, and guns all over the place, the shooting and so on. But why are people doing that? So in that community policing intervention, they came to realize there are many factors, social factors, economic factors, even political factors that are generating the crime. There was so much poverty, lack of opportunities, and because of that, it has also caused a lot of drug abuse, within the community. And so, of course, where drugs are, you'll have people trafficking drugs, selling drugs, and that would generate, rivalry and gangs and so on. So if you want to contain that, it is not a question of arming the police, deploying the military, bringing guns and think, okay, we can just shoot, go patrol the communities and we will deal with it. So New York, they've done that and it didn't work. So they came to realize, look, we need to start something called community policing. How do we involve the community, to understand the nature of these crimes, where these crimes are happening, who is doing it, how, and that would require, therefore, the police also to build trust with the members of the community, because the police on their own cannot just enforce the law, cannot just maintain combat crime. Members of the community are necessary because members of the community, it's in the community that crime is taking place. So they know who are the criminals. They know where the criminals are. They know why people, I may be your family member and I'm a drug addict. You would know why I'm into drugs, why I'm into crime, because we are family, we live in the same neighborhood and so on. So this is to say, the crime issue in the Gambia cannot be seen merely from the point of security, from the point of law enforcement and so on. We have to look at what are the factors. So it is important that the police, which I know a long time ago, a man called Ples Jan, who was a former IGP during his tenure, introduced community policing in the Gambia. It was eventually abandoned and picked up later, but it's still weak. So there's need to do that. All right, so that they engage with the communities. But more importantly, it is for the government to realize, look, the social economic factors in the Gambia are a fertile ground for crime. The poverty, the unemployment, the high cost of living, particularly affecting young people, the lack of opportunities. Just yesterday, I was talking with someone. you look at the whole of Serakunda. I don't even have to narrate that story, but look at the whole of Serakunda. Look at the whole of Banjo. Not to mention other towns and villages all the way to Basse. Where do you see a park? Really? Just a mere park where children can go and play. All right. Where people can go and play basketball or volleyball. All right. You don't see it. Where are parks where they have all been utilized? Bobazon used to have a park. Some garden where there are games there for children. It's been taken over. At Makati Square, there is a corner there which used to be a park. All right. But it is no more there. And a thing like just a mere park is important. You can travel from Joshua here, cut across Kanifi municipality up to Tabokoto. You will not see any park. Now, if you see the football fields, they are all poorly equipped. So that alone is something that is worthy. Imagine if you put basketballs across this municipality, volleyball lawns, other sporting facilities. Instead of young people going to park themselves in in a street corner or on the beach or someone's house, and where they would be talking foolish talk and then smoking and drinking, they may go to the park and play some game there.
Yes.
And imagine if you develop that into some kind of competition. But look at sports in this country. Where do you see a bicycle competition, even wrestling competition? So many competitions could have been taking place where young people, a lot of them have talents, skills hidden, because there is not the facility to expose their hidden talents. So it would have produced a lot of champions, swimming. Who said people cannot swim? But build swimming centers across this community. So that the opportunities are there and the state is not doing it. All right. I mean, go to education. How much is it to go to Gambia University? How many people can afford?
Very expensive.
Yeah. So how do you make sure education is readily available to citizens so that a lot of people would not have excuse of not having education, skills training, and so on? And, that's why I said it's a failed state. For 59 years of independence, we cannot sit here, you don't have those basic services, facilities across the country. So when you look at it, therefore, the crime in this country is directly linked to the poor social and economic conditions. And that is what we need to address. You get out of this street, you will see able-bodied young men and women with wheelbarrows every day at, Westfield here. What can they make? People selling nopal, able-bodied men and women selling nopal. What can you make out of that in a day? Would not that encourage people to go into crime if the opportunity is there? So for me, the issue of the crime, the drugs, is directly linked to the social and the economic conditions which are as a result of the political reality. That is, what are our political leaders at the level of the executive, at the level of the National Assembly? What economic policies are you making? What decisions are you taking in terms of creating facilities, recreational facilities, and other opportunities for the society? And the failure to do that, or to do that adequately, is what is really making governments lose hope in their own country. So those who are not going into crime, for example, into drugs, what are they doing? They are going through the back way. So you still have, hundreds, thousands of our young people going through the back way. Now, you and I can sit here and say, but it's crazy to go through the back way. It's suicide. I mean, that's easy for us to say, and we say it. But I have seen Gambian youths in the villages and towns I live, hardworking, ambitious young people trying to make it. And, when you look at it, and living in this country, I know it is not easy. So that it is not just those young people struggling and unable to make it, that they just think I have to cross the Sahara Desert or the Atlantic Ocean. But I have even seen well-educated people like myself talking about, I have to leave this country.
Yes.
Yeah. So if somebody at my level, like I have to leave this country. I mean, I can tell you the number of people at my level who tell me, all they think about is to leave this country. And they're looking for jobs, international jobs to leave this country, and they are leaving. So why? And so until the government comes to terms with the fact that they are taking the wrong steps, they are not providing the necessary leadership, they are not providing the right policies, they are not creating the right opportunities, crime will be a problem. And, we have not reached the peak yet, sadly, and, which is really scary.
Which is really scary. Thank you, Madi Jobateh. And that will take us to the end of today's episode of Dr. CNG. Thank you for watching. Until then, have a nice day.